book written in ancient times be relevant to us today? It would seem that this ancient book wouldn't be able to keep up with the fast evolution of life, technology, and society as a whole. How can a book written thousands of years ago speak to anything that we have going on today? I really think that's a valid question. So let's talk about it. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. But before we get ahead of ourselves, I just wanted to take a moment to thank you for joining me here at Exposing the Script. I'm greatly appreciative of all the feedback I've received since launching this podcast. It's been quite encouraging. So do me a favor. Like, share, and subscribe to this channel and help me get this out there. This is our house. So please, sit down, get comfortable, type a comment or two. Now let's get to it. I wanted to do a quick segment on the overview of the Bible. I wanted to kind of give us an overall outline of how we will approach this book. I think it's important to understand its construct or how it's made up, especially if we're going to answer those difficult questions we'll face as we begin to approach various subjects. So briefly, I'll address three things. I'll talk about what is the Bible, who was it written to, and what is it about. So what is the Bible? It's God's recorded revelation of himself to mankind. The word Bible comes from a word that simply means books or scrolls. The Bible is a collection of 66 individual books that contribute to one common theme. There are 40 plus writers who came from all walks of life. The Bible was written by shepherds, fishermen, kings. There was even a king's cupbearer who was responsible for tasting the king's drink to make sure it wasn't poison. There's a prime minister, a doctor, a tax collector, and many other people. It was written in 3 continents, Africa, Asia, and Europe. So who was the Bible written to? Well, it was written to a specific nation, to various churches, and certain individuals. Though it had its specific recipients to address situations that may have arose in different times, it was meant to be shared with all of mankind. Its intention was to be passed on from generation to generation to give a variety of instructions or principles that could help us in all areas of our lives. What is it about? Well, in order to understand its content, you have to see how it's put together. There are 66 books, which are divided into the Old Testament and the New Testament. You have 39 books that make up the Old, and you have 27 books that make up the New Testament. It was written over a span of 1,500 years or so. And when you begin to read it, you'll realize that there are a few different types of literary styles or types of writing. If you're in the Old Testament, the first 17 books, Genesis through Esther, they're considered historical books. They just basically give us the origin of the universe, of humanity, and the nation of Israel. The next 5 books, the poetical books, are Job through the Song of Solomon. They use different types of, different styles of poetry to share wisdom, which is the true pearls of life. The last 17 books of the Old Testament are Isaiah through Malachi. These books were written by the major and minor prophets, and the only thing that made a prophet major or minor was the size of his book. Now, when you go to the New Testament, the first 5 books are also considered historical books. They go from Matthew to the book of Acts, and there you'll find the life of Jesus and the expansion of the first century church. The next 13 books, Romans through Philemon, you have the Pauline epistles. These are letters written by the Apostle Paul to specific people and churches. The last 9 books are considered the general epistles. They go from Hebrews to the book of Revelation. These are letters written by various people to a general office. Now here's the cool part. I know some of us have tried to read from front to back, and we'll follow a story, and then we'll turn to another book, the next book, and we'll see that the story changes, the scenery changes, the people change, and it's almost as if we're dropped into a situation that we weren't prepared for. So it's important to understand that the Bible isn't put together in chronological order. So what we're going to do, we're going to arrange it into what I call, or what is called, dispensations or time periods. When we do this, we can watch the story unfold from beginning to end. This will put everything in its proper context, and it will also help us to discover the true intent of the various writers. So here are the time periods. The Old Testament, they cover 9 time periods. The first one is called creation. That's from the book. That's in the book of Genesis, chapter 1 to chapter 11. The next era is called the patriarch era. That's covered in Genesis chapter 12 and 50. It's followed by the Exodus period, and you'll find that time period in the book of Exodus to the book of Deuteronomy. The conquest era is found in the book of Joshua. You also have the Judges era, and that's seen in the book of Judges to the book of Ruth. The next era is called the Kingdom period. That's from the book of 1 Samuel to the book of 2 Chronicles. The next era is the exile era. You'll read about that in the book of Ezekiel to the book of Daniel. Then you have the return era. That's in the book of Ezra to the book of Esther. Now, you also, in the time period between the Old Testament and the New Testament, you'll witness the silence period. And that's 400 years where God didn't send a word through his prophets to his people. And like I said, that's the unspoken period between the Old Testament and the New Testament. Now, when you look at the poetical books in the Old Testament, you'll see that Job is the oldest book of the Bible. The other poetical books, Proverbs, Psalms, Ecclesiastics, and the Song of Solomon, were written during the Kingdom period. Now, the prophetic books can also be arranged in various time periods. You have the pre-exile period, you have the exile period, and you have the post-exile period. And again, this is just a rough outline, and as we move along in each time era, we'll deal with them in great detail. So in the pre-exile period, you have the books of Hosea and Amos written to Israel. You also have the book of Habakkuk, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Joel, Micah, Zephaniah, Lamentations. They were written to Judah. You have the book of Jonah and Nahum, who were written to the Assyrians. And the book of Obadiah was written to Edom. In the exile period, when they were captive in Babylonia, you have the book of Ezekiel and Daniel, which was written from that place. And then the last period, the post-exile period, you have the book of Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi, and they were written to Jerusalem. Now, when we move forward to the New Testament, we'll see that they cover 4 eras. The first era is the Gospel era, and that's from Matthew to the book of John. Then you have the Church era, and that ranges from the book of Acts chapter 1 to chapter 12. That's followed by the Missions era, and that's from Acts chapter 13 to Acts chapter 28. And the last era recorded in the Bible is the Epistle era, and that's from Romans to the book of Revelation. Now, if we use this framework as we study Scripture, we'll discover 2 stories playing out simultaneously. First, you'll see God set standards and expectations with man's constant failure to meet them. But in spite of those failures, you see God's consistent fulfillment of his plan of salvation. The reality of that salvation is seen in the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. So let's simplify this. When you read the Old Testament, Genesis through Malachi, you see the central message that Jesus is coming. You will see the fulfillment of that prophecy in the 4 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, as they record the fact that Jesus was here. And then the rest of the New Testament is letting us know that Jesus will come again. Now, as we move forward, we'll begin to fill in the blank, so don't worry about that. But in order to see what God is truly saying, we have to check all of our preconceived notions and feelings at the door. We will approach some very difficult topics, but with intellectual honesty and integrity. I say that because maybe the Bible doesn't say or teach what we thought it did. Just maybe the scripture we quoted for years isn't really there. Perhaps the stories we learned so long ago, they don't actually mean what we thought they meant. But in order to straighten any of that out, we must be willing to allow the Bible to speak to us. I'm not here to tell you what to believe, just what it says. I have my own convictions, and as we journey, I'll be sure to share them. My hopes are to help you recognize your convictions. To be successful, we can't tell it what it's trying to say. We have to listen to what the Bible is telling us. In order to dig out the truths that are still relevant today, we also have to bridge that cultural gap. We can't look at it with our Western civilized eyes. We have to see what they saw to truly understand what they're really trying to say. It's a tall order, but I think we're up to it. In the next episode, we'll begin to walk down the halls of Scripture by discussing the Bible's account of creation. Again, I want to thank you for checking in with Exposing the Script podcast. See you soon.